Please listen carefully.
This is an Aquarian Radio special podcast. I'm your host, Karen Christine Patrick. We Are Disclosure is a series of philosophical discussion with integrated experiencers, sharing their thoughts on the disclosure of the political realm, the disclosure protocol by the visitors that seems to be a pattern of peer-to-peer contact, choosing the path of exposure to gradually acclimate humanity to the reality of a populated galaxy. Our commentators are not new to the story of contact and have had time to reflect on their experiences and share the perspective. Some of our guests are witnesses to the history of humanity's foray into space. From those very early days, a subtle manipulation was in place to tell a narrative that bypasses true space and the evidence that was found in the exploration of the moon and what is still being discovered by anomaly hunters who are scouring space agency photographs in search of the true history of our planet, our local solar system, neighborhood, and beyond. It is the path of human experience whereby we truly come to terms with our paradigm galactic. Joshua Kent is described as a spiritual traveler, mystic, and rationalist in his late 20s. Joshua has always been a seeker of truth. While the workings of the mind have always been an interest of his, having majored in psychology, his true passion lies in where mysticism and science meet, always having a strange predisposition toward philosophy, spirituality, and why none of the religions or mainstream beliefs of Earth had the complete package. His journey has always been to lift the veil and inspire others to do so for themselves. Joshua has been a guest on Aquarian Radio in the past and shares his insight with us today.
There it went. Well, today we're talking to Joshua Kent here on our series, We Are Disclosure. And the idea here is to kind of own disclosure as human beings instead of waiting for the government or official bodies to, tell us what it is. So, Joshua, I'd really like to get your thoughts on that, and just go ahead, and we've talked briefly about it before the recording started. Tell me what your thoughts are.
Okay. And I totally agree with that. I think a lot of the disclosure begins with us. A lot of people are waiting for them to release the files and, all that kind of thing. And I think you and I talked about this. There's a lot of potential for misguiding there, as well as using it for agendas or, taking some information out while putting other information in that might not be, completely on the level with us. And from my experience, there's a lot of information that, that could be true, that if it was, I could see a reason for not putting it out there. However, that's, I don't think that we're living in that time anymore. I do think, as you were discussing earlier, that it's not so much, well, is it true or is it not? Alien megastructure every day, there's a new article about why they don't talk to us and why, that the possibility that they're all dead, like all these different articles, which for many of us it's just, it's just kind of beating a dead horse, it's no longer a question if, they exist, or in my opinion, from my personal perspective, if they're here, it's about, bringing this out to the forefront and with a level of maturity where we can not just handle it, but kind of integrate all our experiences and stop scapegoating, blaming, victimizing, calling them demons, calling them angels, all that kind of thing. Just the way we interact with people, kind of, which, I guess in that sense that we're kind of, we have issues with that too. But, I definitely think it's kind of a grassroots movement, and I'm glad to be a part of this, and I'm glad that many people are coming together to because it's kind of like A.R. Borton said, it's more like we have to come to it rather than they come to us. They've already been coming to us, and there's been a lot of things that have happened since then, but we kind of have to build that bridge, that consciousness, where we can interact freely and be a part of it. And one of the many solutions for some people, even I believe on the inside, was the development of nocive abilities, or the expansion of consciousness, because at a certain level it gets impossible not to kind of begin to comprehend, one, a cosmic reality, but two, even have interactive experiences with all kinds of energies and entities. And currently we have this idea that everything's spheres and out there in outer space and moving faster than the speed of light's impossible. But to many of us, everything's interconnected. There really, time and distance is kind of an illusion that we're kind of trapped in our senses. But we have higher senses which allow us to completely move beyond those limitations. When that begins, we kind of emerge in a new, not just a new paradigm, but a new field, a new way of looking at things, not so much compartmentalized, as you said, but integrated. And I think that's what we're being tested with a lot here on the surface. And as human beings in general, there's a lot going on. It's kind of like, as they say, evolution of spirit and fire is kind of trial by fire. I think, in a sense, that's happening a lot on a collective level as well. And the idea of ET, the idea of other intelligence, challenges us conceptually. Even to go beyond the idea of a physical, biological, extraterrestrial, but maybe a more multidimensional kind of idea or understanding, and try to understand where we've gone wrong in our physics or our conceptual models of how this all works, or rather to evolve them. So yeah, I totally agree on all that. Is there any other direction we wanted to go in?
Oh, no, that's really good. I got out of that aliens are people, too. There's your T-shirt. No, it was great.
Exactly.
No, very, very insightful, because that's exactly it, it's a discovery of who we are, too. And when you were talking about the nocive ability, that was one of the things we were all in, this group that we've been involved in. We were, experimenting with that and really figuring out, there's this ability that humans have. And we have all this abilities, multiple. We have all this programming that, dissuades us from exploring that. And I think it's specifically because, one part of discovering or making contact with extraterrestrial or multidimensional life form is comparative, anthropology. In other words, kind of looking at how we live with great limitation. We're taught we're very limited. We can't do that, we can't do this. And we'll even have family members saying, you can't do that, repeatedly that we try. And then what's going on is you strip away that program, and it truly is integration, because you feel yourself chopped up in pieces internally. You suddenly realize, well, when I'm with this person, I act this way, or say these things. When I'm with this at work, I'm a different person. You find yourself compartmentalized, and that gnosis thing makes you really aware of that. And then, then you say, hey, I want to be a holistically whole person. I want to be all of who I am.
Perfect. Yeah, I know. I totally agree with that. And I think, in this world, everyone's so kind of the social interaction. I won't call it ego, but people are just not just afraid of the unknown, but like you said, being judged, or how would their life be compromised or affected if they were to explore this path. I think a lot of the fear is because sometimes it's unknown territory, and human beings, once they tend to explore unknown territory, they try to find a belief system or something that explains their experiences or what they're doing, and that's both a good thing in the sense that people are exploring and researching, but it can also be detrimental because a lot of people, they jump out of the box and they jump into another one, and then that kind of becomes their new belief system, especially if they have a tendency to be religious or have a set idea about things. So sometimes we can limit our understanding of what's happening in us to something. Like, for example, someone could get into the occult and, start thinking of us only things of, like, demons and things like that, or vice versa. A religious person might interpret it all like that. But so I think anytime we're coming into a new sphere of contact or consciousness even, we should always be discerning, logical, but with an open mind as well. Kind of a combination of both. And constantly growing and expanding that paradigm or viewpoint. Because I think it's just like consciousness is kind of fractal. I think our capability to understand something is the same way. So at least that's the mentality I employ. I'm always growing my idea of how these things are. When I talk about extraterrestrials, I have to use the language, but mentally and spiritually, that's not how I see them at all. The general connotation that comes with that word, which is like a little green man or a gray with black eyes, or even the word alien has such negative connotation. The Native Americans call them star brothers and star sisters, and to me they're just residents of life. They're in a different area or place, but altogether we're at the root. We're all kind of very connected. I totally agree with all that. We're going back to a little bit of the government disclosure. I've been hearing a lot about what's going on, and it's true. There is a lot of soft disclosure, a lot of fiction emerging that is huge now. Some of the files supposedly being released, Hillary Clinton talking about how she's going to get to the bottom of it, and I've heard also that this is just speculation, I can't say I know this for sure, but that she may be part of something going on in the White House where they're actually finally getting some intel, whereas before it was always just kind of above the pay grade, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I found that very interesting, but even then, like we talked about, there's a compartmentalization and possibility of manipulating the direction of how it all goes, and I really think it's important for people, if they want to bypass all that, is this integration that we're talking about, of conscience, of our ability to interact and explore and investigate on our own. There are actually a lot of people out there doing that, people who could be, school teachers, some who might work in the government, others who, could be musicians, and, either they had contact all their lives or it developed later in life. But a lot of people out there are becoming part of, if you will, a galactic community, because most of the galactic intelligent sentient beings already communicate through what the Tibetans call the Omta. The so-called telepathic network. There's one on Earth. There's one that interconnects throughout space and time. We can resonate further out than we can even imagine. And for a lot of people, there's already kind of a community going on, and a grassroots, I think personally, telepathic movement to help with this process. And I think more and more people are beginning to kind of come into this domain or this sphere, and as it happens, contact between the people here, not just the governments and not just the elite and the special access programs, is going to become a little more common. And this is something also we have to be careful of, because it's just like talking to a human being. I mean, even if they're friends, even if they're family, it doesn't mean that, they don't have their own quirks and dynamics and things that, like someone could flip on you, or, you could have a disagreement, whatever. We have to approach them just as we would a person, and not put them on a pedestal or, the opposite, condemn them because, they're not angels or, whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think this is all very important. Sorry. What were you going to say?
Oh, no, that's really excellent. Like it doesn't help to deify or demonize. That's very true. There are beings with their own, just like, the one very unhelpful word is the word they, because it makes a whole range of diversity into some monolithic term that's singular. And I think it's just like if you went to any other country, you have different cultures, different types of food they ate, different philosophies. Humans, like, we're not a they either. We're pretty diverse in all our different cultural expressions. So it's unhelpful to say they this or they that. It's just a word that we'll probably lose as we cross over into awareness, and we'll have names and we'll have that civilization, this civilization, just like we talk about Africans or Italians or something like that. You're very right. And one term that was interesting recently was there's a gentleman named Preston James from Veterans Today, and he, absolutely, I am hearing from many corners we are going to have disclosure. Brett and I are hearing it from insider people. But what he said was he was told, Preston James was told, that it is a disclosure that does not upset the natural order. And I thought that was a very interesting way to put it. What's the natural order that they're worried about? That was interesting to me, because I think that would be the world governance expression of what they want. They, the world government. But I think that the bigger they, now I'm using it, the galactic community or whatever, might have a different thing in mind, because the natural order we kind of have right now is not conducive to everyone on this planet being, clothed, housed, fed, and taken care of. And I believe that's our path to space. You graduate into this community when you have humane treatment of everyone. Otherwise, why would they want you to graduate from your planet and go out into the universe when you haven't even taken care of the most basic thing that a human family is just supposed to do? So anyway, that's my thought.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. One interesting thing that you kind of sparked in me is, this idea of a new world order or world government coming into being. In one way, it's inevitable, and I think it's possible that in the earlier days, some of these people realized the reality of, at least to some degree, the cosmic reality, and that we weren't going to be able to leave, or rather to become a part of greater communities if in speaking bluntly, we get our stuff together,
Yeah.
And that includes a government that's worldwide where everyone can be a part of it. But I think, like you were just discussing with the natural order of things, the reason it became a clandestine agenda, and especially rooted in economic control and government, integration, that kind of thing, is because they didn't want to upset the natural order, but they knew it was something that had to be done, or at least move towards that way. And it might be that there's different factions or groups moving towards different kinds of economies or world orders, if you will. The idea of a world order, or rather a world civilization, isn't a bad one, isn't a negative one, but I do think that how it turns out is a reflection of the means, the way you get it to come out. And if it's through deception and manipulation and lies and greed and control and killing and things like that, I that's something that indeed, we have to be careful of. And also, there might be extraterrestrial entities who also want to push for a world kind of scenario where they could make more open trade, or rather, actually, rather say more open contact, but on the surface, but below the surface, maybe more of a trading thing. And there have been some insiders who talked about how some of these entities portray themselves a certain way, and have people on the ground who, I wouldn't say work for them, but have a, if you will, communication. And they, so it's kind of complex. And then you have, a lot of them who just want us to graduate, who just want us to spiritually make our own choices. And I think that's really important, is that humanity has to decide, or at least become educated enough to a point where we can begin to make these decisions. And so this whole disclosure thing being the natural order of things, I find that interesting, because real disclosure, the way I see it, would be difficult to keep control of the natural order of things. I mean, maybe a kind of the natural order of progression. Sorry, what were you saying?
If it was the same cadre of people in charge who've brought us to a very negative situation for most of the planet, then that natural order, it's still unnatural to me.
Exactly. I find it to be very unnatural. It's not a natural order at all. It's more of a unnatural, artificially created pecking order. And a lot of the disclosure issue is mostly economic, I think. I think, whoever, it's like the new gold rush, whoever gets access to these technologies is not only has literal power in the sense of, having advanced technologies, everything from, who knows, potential time travel, space travel, youth, canceling of gravity, transferring of consciousness from one body to another. Who really knows what's going on with that? But regardless, it's something, one, a value to possess, and two, the trickling down and the watering down of technologies has immense value over a large period of time. So in this way, the pecking order is maintained, and also, the consumer mentality is also maintained. We get our iPhones and we get our upgrade every year, but we don't really have access to, the mind-shattering, life-altering things that some of them do. So again, I'm not complaining about that. I'm not trying to create a conspiratorial view about it, but it is important for people to measure and weigh all the angles of how disclosure is going to come about and how it's going to impact us. And ultimately, if reality is a collective reality and it is a manifestation of where we place our attention, or et cetera, we do have a say. We have a say just by how we direct our attention. That's important for people to realize too. Reality right now seems to be kind of in this merging of different scenarios and timelines. But I do feel personally that this emergence of a cosmic reality is inevitable. I feel like it's already here. I feel like it's like they almost don't have a choice as much as, and at some level I agree with trying to maintain the order, because an instant transition is usually a chaotic one. But I do think that we maybe should, keep a lookout for a progressive transition where just by the evolution of concepts and ideas that are out there, we naturally create better frameworks for living, in general. And it shouldn't be about us versus them or taking their power away. And I'm hoping that in some way there is some sort of, gnosis or spiritual agreement where we can kind of come to a middle ground and live in the reality that we could live in as human beings.
Oh, excellent. No, I think one of the great gifts of developing your gnosis capacity and making connections with other beings is an empowerment where our society kind of tends to say, well, this is just too big for you. You're just a, there's a phrase I just dislike. You are just a fill in the blank, whatever your profession is or whatever they want to judge you on. And developing your gnosis capacity, you realize that you're connected to connected to all beings. You are not just a.
Right.
It's bigger than that, and you're like you said, attention. Your attention creates, a centripetal force, and creates cohesion. Wherever you put your attention on it, that matters. And if you put your attention on, hey, maybe these guys over here want very stringent, they want to live on the planet where the Klingons are, the Borg. Maybe that's what they want. But if I put my attention on, I want a peaceful planet of abundance where everyone's provided for, and no matter what, keep focusing on that and believing that it's possible. We can all do that. Everyone can do that. Anyone, and hope for it. And I came to this by a strange route. I was raised conspiracy theory negative. We're all going to die in some kind of Armageddon, and or the commies were going to come. I go back a ways on that mindset. And I was very depressed as a younger person. And I thought, well, okay, if it happens, it happens. But in the meantime, maybe I want to live as positively as I can and try to do the right thing, and whatever happens, happens. And that was a saving grace for me to turn that around and, say, okay, yeah, this is these guys' intentions. They have a lot of resources to make that happen. But I also have my own thoughts and my own goals for my life. And it's made all the difference, right? It makes all the difference, Right. And it's a discipline. I got to think about, I got to turn off the TV and think about that every day. I've got to, make a choice every day to think that way.
Right.
And do something what I call persistent intention. Persistent intention is to keep thinking the way that you want it to be. Right. And I've seen the results of that, and they're kind of miraculous.
I agree. 100%. I think that's very important. And these days, I'm very, I just stay focused on the, evolution of consciousness and mind and that kind of thing. And, I'm still aware of all the other elements, the darker elements, all the other things going on. I can even pay attention to them. But it's different than, I guess, in the past, and for me personally, when I began in that journey of trying to uncover, what was going on, everyone goes to that kind of beginning, government, this, that, right? And you put a lot of energy into it because you get passionate about it, you get a little upset, all these different things. But anyways, after all that, I can now still see and observe and pay attention, but without necessarily, almost as if I'm not a part of it, almost as if I'm just in observer mode, and I'm watching all these things happen, but I'm not giving it my actual emotional attention or energy. This whole thing with Trump going on, everyone's talking about, and it's not that I don't want people to be aware of that. It's more just like it's not even a part of my reality anymore. I'm not going to give it the benefit of my energy or my attention anymore. And, there's one thing I do feel is interesting is we become more consciously attuned, we become more connective, and thus we become a little bit more of a powerful manifester. And this can have detrimental qualities obviously as well as extremely good qualities. So it does kind of become a responsibility, but also a learning journey. There's a learning to it. And I find it to be a beautiful thing, and I think all of humanity is kind of eventually inching its way towards that.
Charlotte Rose Wan is an experiencer, poet, and has done media work in the area of ET contact and the Anunnaki. Blessed with gifts from her Irish and Cherokee heritage, she has also worked on developing what she calls the knowing. In dreams, visions, and through her art, she has made contact through the inner net, going into the broad internal realm of thought to delve into questions she's had through her multi-varied life.
you. Today we're talking with Charlotte Rose Wan on our series, We Are Disclosure. And Charlotte is an experiencer. We've talked to her a couple of times, and we're going to go into this discussion about taking a different tack on the idea of disclosure is not necessarily waiting for official government approval of the information or however it is they're going to, couch the information, but to talk to experiencers on what they think disclosure should look like. So thank you so much, Charlotte, for coming to talk with us.
Thank you, Karen.
Yeah. So my first question is if you can give a really quick, synopsis of your experiences, just so people kind of know where you're coming from.
Well, I kind of, in our conversation we had, where we had a one-on-one conversation, I kind of got into that a little bit with the traveler. That started when I was about 5 and found out that he wasn't human at all. And that reoccurred in my life a few times, and then I actually saw a craft when I was 9 years old. That was quite an experience, and it seemed like it was predestined or preordained or something. It was like a meeting, like my higher self knew that the meeting was taking place. I wasn't frightened at all.
Well, that's pretty amazing, and not too many people have such a vivid experience. They're knocked out, or as Reverend John Polk says, they get alien anesthesia. So for you to have a full conscious remembrance of that is actually pretty remarkable from when I've been talking to other experiencers.
Well, yeah, the interesting thing was after I saw the craft when I was 9 and my brother was with me, we kind of went through that phase, because there was the next day, the children that were with us, they didn't speak of the incident, and we didn't speak of it either. After it happened, we didn't talk about it for years later until I was in my teens. And then it was weird. One night we were just sitting and talking, and it was like we were allowed to speak about it then. And then it just all came out, and we were able to talk. I could remember everything that happened. It's so weird for so many years, from the time I was 9 until I was 17, to never speak of seeing this craft with my brother. And then to be able to finally be able to just talk about it. It just flooded out of us. It was like, whoa, it was like a block or a dam had burst or something, and a block had been removed, and we were able to talk about it.
So how many years ago was that experience?
That took place back when I was 9 years old. You mean when I saw the craft for the first time?
No, when the blockage kind of got removed.
Oh, when I was 17. So that was quite a few years back. And I don't know how to explain it. It's like the memory is burnt into my mind. It's like if I think about it, it's like it happened just yesterday. That was what we were noticing, the difference between, say, like a memory that happens in your childhood. You know how you can go back and you can revisit memories in your childhood, and some of them are kind of foggy, and some of them feel like a dream, and you can't remember all the details. But if I go back and I think about these details, it's like they were just burnt into my mind. I can remember them crystal clear.
Yeah, I understand that, because my UFO experience was when I was 18, and I totally remember every detail. I've had a few murkiness things happen in terms of time anomaly kind of thing, but generally speaking, the step-by-step things that happened, and I was with an older relative at the time, and to the time of his death, he recalled it as well. So we just talked about it when we got together as a family, and it was like just kind of sat there as a mystery for a very long time. The one thing I had trouble remembering was the shape of the craft. I mean, I could remember what the shape of the craft looked like, but it was hard to describe until later. I always said it looked like a Christmas star, and I said it's a star tetrahedron, and that unlocked a whole bunch of... So what I'm asking about, so then one of the things I'm trying to do in this series is talk to people that I call integrated experiencers. So they're people who've had enough time after the experience to think about it, find meaning in it, have it be part of their lives. A lot of people even after they remember the experience because of their belief system. And I was this way to a certain extent, too. I kind of pushed it away because I didn't have any, reference point of how to integrate it in my life. That came quite a bit later because in my belief system at the time, seeing a UFO or any kind of thing like that was, the person was crazy or they were delusional. My father said that was delusional stuff. Or it was a negative experience, like it might be demonic or something. That was where my belief system was until older when I started, putting more and more pieces together, and I had this epiphany one day where it was like my belief systems kind of adapted. And then it opened up a whole new area of thought. And, today now I have a more balanced view of a lot of things because I've had time to think about them and develop a philosophy and to speak out on it. And I came out, right around the time I met you, we met, I think, in 2010 or 11, and I came out in 2012 pretty strongly. And I figured, if there was going to ever be a year to come out, it was 2012, because that was, very high drama year of people thinking about things like this. So now we're down the road, and we have at least one presidential candidate, Hillary Clinton's staff, saying she's going to get to the bottom of Area 51. All of a sudden, it's now in the political discussion. So then that's why we're doing this series, We Are Disclosure, because you and I have talked. It's kind of like I am a bit dubious of the political process being the way that disclosure needs to come out. So you and I have talked about that, and I was wondering about your thoughts further on that.
Yes. It's interesting. You mentioned 2012 because that was the year that I kind of came out and started talking about my experience publicly, and I lost some friends over it. I'm sure you had a few family members and worked their eyebrows at you, like, what is going on with you?
Yep.
But for the most part, I had a lot of support, too. And then a lot of my friends who had never spoken of incidents in their life came forward and would come up to me and say, when I saw this thing in the sky, and we wondered what it was. And so they started telling me, stories from when they were children or from even their adult years of seeing things. So I think it opened up the door to conversation, which I think is important with what you're doing here with We Are Disclosure. It's opening up the door and allowing people to come forward with their stories and talk about them and not feel like they're going to be ridiculed. I think we're moving past that point now. We're moving to the point where people are they're a lot more accepting and open now when someone says they've had an experience like that.
Well, I think there's been a lot of people who've had one. It's kind of like stories around the campfire, like somebody says they saw a ghost or something, and then pretty soon everyone's telling their Bigfoot story or ghost story. I think discussion and openness is the most important thing. And as far as people, it seems to me that the ridicule is very programmed, like Pavlov's dog, where they ring the bell and the dog salivates kind of thing, because of the media and stuff, automatically, they have a treatment. If there's a UFO report in the news, they stick it at the end of the news report, and they kind of say, oh, it's something out of this world, and then they'll play like the X-Files theme or something, and they'll say the incident, but they'll have a plausible deniability ridicule factor. So most people feel to me, if they're in a mockery mode, it's like they've been subliminally trained to laugh or make fun. I don't know if they necessarily are doing that because they really have thought about it. And so this is where our boldness to speak out about our experience, and we don't have all the answers, or we don't know everything, but that I have absolutely seen the boldness of people going up, and we're connecting with each other on, we and I are involved in the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters, or FREE, and the boldness. And sometimes people are saying, when they're on this Facebook group that we're on, this is the first time I've told anybody. I've heard that a lot this last year. This is the first time I've told anybody. So I think that 2016 I've predicted is a year of the need to tell, and it's you and me and other people we know with our boldness. This is my experience, and you just take it or leave it, because I have to be who I am.
I agree. I do. I feel like I've noticed the turning point. I think it started right around 2012. For some reason, there was like some kind of a shift in that direction, and people were coming forward more. And since that experience from when I was 9 years old, I've had a lot of experiences. Too numerous to talk about. I know you've had similar experiences.
Yeah, me too. I've seen a lot of UFOs, actually. I'm kind of at the point now where I can kind of, telepathically sort of, say, hey, I'm here, and within an hour have at least 2 or 3, show up. And they're not helicopters, and they're not satellites, and, so I've been doing that with people, when I've had the opportunity. I don't know if I just shifted into the frequency where I can see them, but not only that, other people can too when I do that. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's a new factor. And it's like if I'm going to report those every 5 minutes at MUFON, I think I'm going to be really busy. So I had a gentleman from MUFON, the other day say, hey, report them. And I said, okay, I will. I will now. But it's going to be, I'll be busy explaining them. When I first got the new car that I had, I opened up the sunroof thingy because I thought, wow, this is cool. I have a sunroof at night. And we looked up, and there was something that started to look like a satellite, and then it stopped in the middle of the air and started pulsing, and I go, that's not a satellite. And then it zoomed off, So that happens often. And I know other people who can do that, too. And then there's a lot of telepathic contact as well. And, what do you do with that? It's like, that is my reality, and I like it because I like knowing that there's more. I always thought there's more to life than just, celebrity gossip and sports and eating hamburgers and drinking the right soft drink.
I've actually tried that twice, and it worked. Once when I was in England, I was sitting out in the backyard of the friend's house that I was visiting there, and it was the day before I was going to leave. And I remember looking up at the sky, and I was like, hey, if there's because I was thinking of all the crop circles that happen over there. Oh. I was like, if there's anyone up there, let me see you. And, of course, nothing appeared at that moment. I went home, and the very next day, the person saw a triangle-shaped craft
oh, wow.
right out there in the backyard. I'm like, I left, they came. And then last year, I did that in Ohio. I remember looking up at the sky. Where my bed was, out, you could see right out the window up into the sky. And I remember looking up, and it was around 2 or 3 in the morning. And I remember sending out that little request, if there's anyone, my star family, would you allow me to see you? And I went to sleep. And then the next morning I got up, went to the bathroom, came back, laid down, looked out the window, and there, weird timing, perfectly, was this elongated diamond-shaped craft. It was sort of charcoal colored, really dark gray or black, and it just slowly went by. I mean, they must have, I don't know how I saw it so clearly, but they were going super slow, and it was almost like watching them float through the air, and then it just was gone. And I was like, thank you.
That's cool. Yeah. So, yeah, we have people who are having these experiences, very profound experiences. And so the idea of we are disclosure, it seems like, I think that, it's a lot of people having experiences. I think it's the point, in other words, why are we waiting for the government to say whatever it's going to say, when in fact the visitors themselves might have a plan or a protocol of their own. And I think it's peer-to-peer personal contact, just as you're describing, because then that's a way to acclimate it. And then the next positive step is we discuss it and talk about it and stop making it either uber super scary, like they do in the movies, or like it's something rare, or like it's an illusion or a mirage or whatever. If they have, I think there's millions of people having these experiences, and we're crossing over from being afraid to say anything to boldly, talking to each other at the very least. We're finding each other on all these different kinds of groups and support groups and things. And then, as we've seen from many types of groups, like for like gay people and people who have sexual abuse, or people who have any kind of cause where they feel ostracized from society, and they band together and make society adapt to, that they're, hey, we're here, and that's it, get over it. I think that that's coming for experiencers. It's already here. So we have this theme, we are disclosure. What would that mean to you as you think about that?
I feel that experiencers, it has to come from experiencers. The disclosure has to come from the experiencers. If we may get disclosure from the government, but I don't feel that it's going to be anything that is rich or anything that resonates with people. I think it's going to be a lot of cover-up. I still think that it's going to be trickled down. I don't feel that it's going to be the disclosure that everyone has been waiting for. And that's why it has to come from the experiencers. It's happening to the people. It's happening to the experiencers. And they're the ones who have to come forward. They're the ones who have to voice what is happening in their lives. And I think that this is opening a pathway for that with We Are Disclosure. That's powerful. We are disclosure.
That was one of those things that, how you get a download that kind of popped into my head about 2012. And I've been sitting with it for a while and thinking about it. And you said a minute ago, you said it would not be the rich, like enriched kind of information and trickle down. I think you're right. And also it will be, that enrichment is like a wisdom base or full expression. Other than like, they're going to show us some foil or some kind of crashed craft or whatever, your dead alien, whatever, and finally say that's true. But it's not the enriched aspect of having telepathic contact with other races and, learning about their culture, learning about multidimensional aspects. These are things that are, I don't feel would be easily expressed in the language of governance and, military-industrial complex kind of ways. They have a certain way of thinking that I think experiencers have a different way of thinking when they've had a whole lifetime to think about it.
Exactly. It's like standing out and watching something happen and then being the person who it's happening to. There's such a difference in the way the story would be told.
I think it would be experiencers would recognize instantly if they're being lied to.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they had this wisdom and understanding by experience happen to them, and if somebody comes along and talks about their own experience and says something slanted a certain way or overly simplified, you're going to know it. This is coming from knowing.
It is. Like when we're talking about experiences that happen between the both of us, and it sparks a conversation, and we're like, oh, I know exactly what you're talking about, because we are experiencers. And so when you hear a watered-down version, or like you said, an oversimplified version, I just feel that is not what's needed. What's needed is for the experiencers to come forward, to tell their stories. That's what's going to spark this whole movement, is the people that this is happening to.
Yeah, one experiencer from the military was Clifford Stone, and he said, do you want what sounds credible, or do you want the truth?
I like that.
Yeah, it's a paraphrase, but I like that. Do you want me to tell you the story the way it happened, or what sounds good. And I've known this from various experiencers who have had that struggle of, like, they are in the military, or there's some, they are in some kind of echelon of professionalism, and their friends tell them, "Oh, don't say that part. That doesn't sound credible." And they kind of have been given into that. But now, down the road, where they've seen even the weirdest, aspect, and there's always weird aspects to this stuff that doesn't make sense, but it connects to something else or someone else's story, and then they realize, okay, that makes sense. I understand that now. Even if it doesn't sound credible to people, that is a truthful aspect. And
exactly.
Now I want to revise that story and say, okay, I had this happen, and now I understand that connects to this other thing. And it's a lot of connectivity that happens when experiencers talk to each other. And that was some weird aspect they didn't think about before suddenly jumps out. Oh, for instance, when I said that the craft I saw when I was 18 was a star tetrahedron shape, and I think you and I were both in conversation with Michael E. Hill, and he said, he's filming those UFOs over Lake Erie and witnessing that, and he says many of them are star tetrahedron shapes, and they join together and form a bigger craft. And it's like, that's possible with that shape. And it was like he affirmed that to me, that, I have not seen very many, people saying that they saw a star tetrahedron. It's more like a flying saucer or a cigar, but he affirmed that to me.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the last most amazing experiences that I had was in Ritcheyville, Pennsylvania, just outside of Ritcheyville, Pennsylvania. That was back in 2012, late 2012, and we were getting ready to go to the store, and I was in a van, and I had both Katie and Dana with me, and we were going down this little highway that goes off to the interstate, and it's about a 5-mile drive down that highway. And as we started on the highway, I looked over and I saw this huge craft, but it wasn't like the typical craft that you would think of. At first I just kept thinking, what am I seeing? Because it was like there was I'm trying to describe it. It was like a 6-pointed star. There was like a light at the top, like a triangle, but going like sort of a rounded triangle, and then a light at the bottom, and then one right in the middle. And it was about the size of, do you know, like if a full moon, like when the moon is rising?
Yeah, and it looks really big.
It's huge, yeah, like that. It was that huge. And I remember telling the driver of the van, I'm like, oh my God, stop. I cannot believe what I'm seeing right here. And then the kids got frightened at first, and I was like, it's okay, don't be frightened. It traveled along beside us that whole 5 miles, and then came right in front of the van, and then traveled all along the interstate, I would say about 7 miles. And it went up, as it sort of when we were at going onto the ramp of 70, it went up high. It was like I could still see it. I could see where it was, but it was much higher in the sky than when it was following us along the little 2-lane highway. That was astounding to witness. I at the time I called Sandra. We were hosting the radio show with her, and I called her, and I actually sent a video of it to her, but the video, it looks so small, you can't really tell because it was with my cell phone. And I'm speechless. I'm speechless.
I was on that call when you said you saw it.
Yeah, you were there. I was speechless. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. You would think out of all the crafts I've seen throughout my life, but for some reason this craft just amazed me. I guess because it wasn't like anything I'd ever seen before.
Yeah, and it sounded, you said a point and a point and a point. That was what I saw was a star tetrahedron-shaped craft. And like one of those details that people talk about, I could see the interior structure, like it had the outside of it was kind of transparent, And since
you're right.
Since then I've had someone who was the expert on different kinds of crafts that a lot of people can sometimes see through the skin of the craft and see the interior structure, which I was able to do. And it had a glowing center. What I saw was a star tetrahedron with, on each point of the star, it had a pink amber-colored light. And in the center, when I could see the structure of it, had a middle section that was glowing that same color. And
yes.
And it was hurting my head how it shouldn't be there, because by that time
exactly what I was feeling.
It's not what you call aerodynamic. It's kind of low and kind of the size of a small, like, Cessna kind of plane when you're, it's getting ready to land at the airport, so pretty low. It's going by faster than a jet. The relative I was with stopped the van. We got out, and he turned the van off, so the engine was off, and the thing was totally silent as well. And it's just hurting my head, to look at this thing. It's not supposed to be there. It's not supposed to work that way, Craft is not supposed to look like that. At that point, I'd seen jets, and I'd seen Cessna airplanes and Boeing airplanes, and that wasn't right. There was something wrong with it. And you have that. You can't, I like put it behind my mind and then bring it out again and think about it and then put it behind my mind. I did the whole thing like in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where the mashed potato guy like collects every kind of clipping and everything he could about it. I did the same thing. Read every kind of book that I could read.
I was searching I was Googling everything, trying to find a craft that had that signature, like someone had seen that signature. Because it was like literally looking at, like when you're looking at the sun going down, and you're looking at this sphere. It was like looking at this sphere, and I'm thinking, okay, that's not a star, that's not the sun, that's not the moon.
Right.
That shouldn't be in the sky.
Yeah, I've kind of called UFOs weapons of mass instruction. So even if you don't have a visitation of an alien or get taken aboard a craft or anything, if you just see a UFO and it's not a plane or a satellite or Venus or swamp gas, already there is something there that shouldn't be there according to the programming that we've had all along of how things are supposed to be in the sky. And so it just sticks with you. And it's I do believe it's that first level of experience to kind of stick in your head and make you think. And even if that's all, a lot of people go, well, I've never, talked to an alien, so I'm not an experiencer. I say, yes, you are. If you've just seen a UFO and you can't explain it, and it's messing with your reality construct and you're trying to sort that out, then that is an experience that they're trying to let you know there's more to this, framework of matrix of life than what sells products.
And that day I felt gifted. It was almost like a gift, to be able to witness this craft for such a long period of time, and I felt such a resonance with the beings that were in that craft. So it was just an experience. That was another life-altering experience for me.
Yeah. I would even say, too, I've said that people who investigate stuff like this, that they're experiencers, too. They may not have personally seen one. I know a lot of people are very passionate about, doing case studies and talking to witnesses and, trying to learn about sightings. They're an experiencer level, too, because they're knowing just about something different than the normal framework. But yeah, I think it's a gift. I think I've had primarily positive experiences with extraterrestrial beings and telepathic contact, so that I feel like it's a gift when I have those experiences, because I get to know more about the cosmos. I get to look from very different perspectives. So yeah, I have that feeling too.
Yeah, I've been lucky. I know I've had friends who've had some negative experiences but my experiences have all been very positive. I haven't, knock on wood, I haven't had any kind of really negative experiences that I can remember. And I guess that I can remember is probably the key word there. Being able to remember. But from what I can remember, they've been positive.
Yeah. And that's an unfolding, too, is remembering, because I think Reverend John Polk, who's on with us on Fridays and does the Experiencers Network, in his book, he talks about alien anesthesia, and he's currently talking about a case right now where beings actually showed up at an experiencer conference, and people were struggling with remembering the event. They got hit with that alien anesthesia, which is, I think, something that helps us unfold it in a period of time that we can accept it and come to terms with it maybe a little bit easier, as an unfoldment, as we're ready to know something. That seems to be part of the pattern in many, many cases. Like, you're just ready in your life to... I put most of this stuff out of my mind until I raised my kids, because I just couldn't go there in my head when I had family obligations. And then it was after my kids were grown up, and it's like, okay, I'm, at this point in my life, I'm ready to tackle this and figure this out for myself.
And also trying to discern the difference between whether it was government or whether it was alien, what people think of as alien abduction, whether it was a government experiment, whether it was actually extraterrestrial. Because I had an incident that occurred when I was 16 years old. We were going down Interstate 10 in California, and there is a little part of the sort of desert area along 10 that is all government. I don't know if you've ever been out in California, but as you're going into that area towards San Bernardino.
Yes.
And that little stretch, that long stretch that's sort of government property? Well, we were going along there, and I was driving, and my mom and my brother and my sister-in-law was in the car, and it was a clear blue sky. And out of nowhere, it started getting very cloudy, a storm, and I would not pull over. I don't know why. It felt like a weird phenomenon. I didn't understand. I was like, how could it be cloudy? A clear blue sky one minute, and then it was like we went into a fog bank, and I saw tractor trailers and cars parked alongside the road. And there were no people in those vehicles. And I was saying, oh my God, where are the people? And my mom is like, maybe they're at an auction. And I said, Mom, this is government land. They're not in an auction. Like,
yeah, $500 hammer.
Exactly. And it just freaked me out. And I was like, I couldn't see the road in front of me, but I could see the little yellow line on the side, so I knew that I was on the road. And I was like, I'm not pulling over. I'm white-knuckling the steering wheel. I'm like, I'm not pulling over. I don't know where those people went, but I don't want to know. And then, but the weird thing was, it started thinning out, and literally it couldn't even have been a minute. It was seconds. Those same vehicles that had no one in them were passing me up. The big truck, the tractor trailer just was passing me up. And then all of a sudden it thinned out and went back to this beautiful blue sky again. And wow. I to this day do not know what happened. And the bad part is I'm thinking, my God, at one point, did we become one of those people that were not in the vehicle? Because how was I back on the road and all of a sudden these people are passing us up? Because there was no one on that interstate as I was going through this really thick fog. There was no one, and then all of a sudden, literally within 2 seconds or 3 seconds of coming into this, it sort of thinned out a little bit. And as it thinned out a little bit, they were passing me up. And I was like, wow. What just happened here?
It sounds like a Stephen King movie.
Yeah, it was crazy. I was like, to this day, when I think about it, I wonder what happened to us. And if it was that Was that a government experiment? Was that a time anomaly? You know, it happened on government land.
Well, it's interesting you say that because Brett Colin Shepard, my partner, he had a very close encounter on that same highway, but in Arizona, as he kept going east. And he was with a friend, and they had a hexagonal ship come right in front of them, almost like 10 feet in front of them as he's going down the highway. And he had the same feeling not to stop, just to keep driving. And that thing was right in front of them for several minutes. And then it zoomed up and joined, connected together with some other ships and took off. And he had a telepathic impression, and he did a painting based on his telepathic impression. And his friend, pretty much wigged out and pretty much didn't talk about it anymore. It's like that just didn't fit in his head either, And later they just don't talk anymore. But it was like Highway 10. That's the place to be, right? The extraterrestrial highway. It's like you want to know something weird going on Highway 10.
Anomaly Central.
Exactly. And so, and then, you're an interesting case because you seem to always have a vehicle full of people.
Yeah.
So how does that go down later when you finally stop and you go, what was that? I mean, do we talk about it? We don't talk about it? I don't know.
It was weird. I know it is just like everybody's like, we're not going to ever talk about that. That'll get locked up in a little
maybe
room.
Someday, I had a witness. I had my relative who's passed away since then, and he talked about it all the time. And I visited his wife, these are my godparents, and I talked about it to her, and she said, "Oh yes, you used to talk about that all the time." You couldn't forget it. It was just too close. It's just too. It was just a very vivid thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like now, we're talking about it, and now, you and Brett had a similar thing now. I don't think you've talked about that you're both on Highway 10. That's interesting about the fog thing, and then missing time, and now we're all pondering this together, and I think that's a real key to this We Are Disclosure thing, is that we're now talking to each other as experiencers. And forget about somebody who doesn't believe. I had a debate the other day with somebody, and I had all the evidence together on a certain thing, and this person said, until I check it out for myself, I'm not going to believe you. And it's like, okay, then it's not for you,
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine. I don't know what to do with that anymore. I don't want to try to convince anyone, because I really do believe it needs some personal experience is the key to this. And then kind of overcoming the fear and being in wonderment, like, oh my gosh, curiosity and wonderment. This is really a key factor too. It's like, I kind of want to know. Like, I have a need to know myself. Mm-hmm. And so now I talk to people who've had their experiences, and this is the path. I really think this is the path for real disclosure, is we talk to each other, and we sort of gently, by means of human experience that's shared, sitting around the campfire telling our ghost stories, we're going to sort some things out. I really think that's the path, and what We Are Disclosure kind of really means. So Charlotte, thank you for sharing your great stories and your experiences. I've heard them over the years, and I really appreciate your boldness. And I know it hasn't been easy, but it's been really nice to be your friend and one of those friends that we talk about this stuff and encourage each other to be more bold and to be more informed. So thank you. Is there any last thoughts that you might have?
I'm going to save that. I'm going to save the next story for the next show.
Oh, we'll have more opportunities. Yes.
Yeah. I was just thinking about most of my experiences have happened with other people around. I've had a few experiences alone, but it seems like most of them there's always someone with me, or quite a few people with me.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and so they've got their own path to sorting that out.
Mm-hmm.
With you. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you so much for having me. I feel like shows like this are extremely important.
I agree with you, and we'll continue on this path. We are Disclosure on Aquarian Radio. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Please listen carefully.
Thanks for listening to this podcast from AquarianRadio.com. Special thanks to Janet and Sasha Lesson, who provide this network. And our music was from the freemusicarchive.org. Please Listen Carefully by Jazzar and Dream On by the Pipe Choir. Thank you so much for listening.